Picture a jar of cold cream. Now hold it in your hands. Feel the weight of it. Heavier than you would expect. Maybe 4 ounces of white, waxy substance sealed under a tin lid with a paper label that says something like miraculous restorative formula or youth-giving skin emollient or Dr. Somebody's scientific beauty preparation. Open it. The smell hits you first. Roses, mineral oil, something slightly medicinal underneath like camphor or carbolic, trying very hard to pretend it isn't there. It's the smell of aspiration, of hope pressed into a petroleum-based paste. Now look at what's in that jar. Beeswax, mineral oil, borax dissolved in rosewater, maybe a little glycerin, possibly some lanolin if the manufacturer is feeling generous, which they often aren't. A few drops of fragrance to cover the fact that the base ingredient is essentially the same stuff they put on wagon wheels. That's it. That's cold cream. And in 1925, that jar costs $1.50. To put that in context, a working girl in New York in 1925 earns maybe $12 a week if she's lucky, 14 if she's skilled, 9 if she's not. $1.50 is not nothing. $1.50 is lunch for 2 days. $1.50 is the difference between a seat in the warm picture house on Friday night and standing in the rain outside it, looking at the poster. And yet women are buying cold cream in quantities that would stagger you. Not just wealthy women in their brownstone townhouses. Not just the socialites whose photographs appear in Vogue and Harper's Bazaar. 1Z, by the way. They didn't add the second one until later. All women. Factory girls and shop girls and stenographers and telephone operators and waitresses and the wives of men who think their wives don't spend money on such things. They're all buying cold cream. They're buying cold cream and face powder and rouge and lip colour and eye pencils and astringent toners and skin bleaching creams. Those exist, and we'll talk about them, and hair-waving lotion and eyebrow darkeners and nail varnish that chips off before Tuesday. They are buying the promise of transformation, the idea that what they look like can be controlled, changed, perfected, and someone is selling it to them. Tonight that someone is you. So I make these history stories, and I genuinely have no idea if you're listening to this at 11 at night with a pillow over your face, or if you're folding laundry, or if you fell asleep in your car in a parking garage somewhere, and this is what's playing. Either way, I hope you're comfortable. I hope you have something warm to drink or someone warm to be near, because tonight we are going back. Back to a moment that shaped the world you currently inhabit every time you walk past a pharmacy, every time you pick up a moisturizer, every time you see an advertisement that implies, very gently, very soothingly, that you could be so much more than you are if only you bought this particular product. That moment is the 1920s. More specifically, it is October of 1925. More specifically still, it is 6:47 in the morning on a Tuesday in a boarding house on West 28th Street in Manhattan, New York City, and you need to be at your counter at Wanamaker's department store by 8 o'clock sharp, or Mrs. Harriet Fitch will have something to say about it that you will not enjoy hearing. Get up. Get up. Your eyes open to darkness. Not complete darkness. There's thin grey light coming through the gap in the curtain that isn't quite a curtain. Just a length of muslin Mrs. Pelletier tacked over the window when you moved in and said would do nicely, which it doesn't quite, but you've stopped mentioning it. For a moment, maybe less than a moment, maybe just the space between 2 heartbeats, you don't know where you are. You're home. You're in Dayton. Your mother is in the kitchen making oatmeal on the gas range. and the smell of it is reaching up the stairs, and you have exactly 20 minutes before you need to get up for school. Then it hits you. Not an oatmeal smell. Nothing so wholesome. The first thing you smell in your room at 47 West 28th Street is the room itself. It has a smell that belongs specifically to it, like all small rooms do. Plaster that breathes damp in the night, wool that's been slept in and sweated through and never quite dried properly. The particular staleness of air that's been breathed by two women and never exchanged for fresher air because the window sticks and you are both too tired at night to fight with it. Under that, pipe smoke from the room next door. Mr. Kavanagh, who works night shift somewhere and sleeps during the day and smokes his pipe between midnight and 2 in the morning, which you know because you can smell it through the wall. Under that, and this is the layer that gets you every morning, the layer that makes you understand where you are with absolute certainty. Vera's cold cream. Vera Kowalski, who's 22 to your 19, who's been in New York for 4 years already, who works at the Revlon factory in New Jersey and commutes across the river every weekday looking like she's been assembled from spare parts, Vera applies cold cream to her face every single night before she sleeps. A thick white layer of it, smeared on with the back of her hand, left to sink in overnight, wiped off with a cloth that she drapes over the radiator to dry. Her cold cream smells like roses and mineral oil and something slightly medical, and it fills the room by morning. You've been smelling Vera's cold cream for 3 months, ever since you arrived in September from Dayton, Ohio, with 2 suitcases, a letter of reference from your former employer, Mr. Brinkley, who ran the 5 and Dime on Ludlow Avenue, and a determination so fierce it actually frightened you a little. Welcome to New York City. 1925. The greatest, loudest, most expensive, most indifferent city in the world. You're lying on a narrow bed. A single, technically though single, implies a standard width that this bed does not achieve, under 2 blankets and your coat, because the radiator in your room works on a schedule known only to itself and God. It gave heat from approximately 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. last night, and then went silent with a series of clunks, like a man sitting down heavily in a chair, and hasn't stirred since. October in Manhattan, cold enough to matter. Your name is Agnes Calloway. You're 19 years old and you've been in New York for exactly 93 days, which you know because you've been counting. You came with $42 in your pocket and a letter of reference, and you left with a job at Wanamaker's department store on Broadway and 10th Street as a beauty demonstrator for the Helena Rubenstein line, which sounds considerably more glamorous than it is. Back in Dayton, everyone said New York would either make you or eat you alive. They weren't wrong on either count. Vera is still asleep. You can hear her breathing on the other side of the curtain Mrs. Pelletier has strung down the middle of the room to give you both the illusion of privacy. It's a yellow floral curtain that doesn't quite reach the floor and billows slightly when either of you moves. It is the thinnest possible version of privacy, but you have both learned to pretend it is sufficient. You need to get up. You need to be at Wanamaker's by 8. Mrs. Fitch opens the beauty counter at 8 sharp, not 1 minute after, and she will be standing there when you arrive, looking at the clock on the pillar opposite, and if your arrival coincides with the minute hand being anywhere north of 12, she will say absolutely nothing, which is somehow worse than being shouted at. You ease yourself upright. The springs in your mattress protest. You sit on the edge of the bed in the cold dark and allow yourself exactly 10 seconds of existing before you have to become a person who does things. 10 seconds, then you stand up. The floorboards are cold through your wool stockings. You slept in your stockings. You sleep in your stockings most nights in October, which your mother would find undignified and you find practical. The basin is on the dresser. The water in it is cold. You filled it last night from the bathroom down the hall, which has one bathtub that serves 12 residents, and a schedule posted on the wall that Mrs. Pelletier enforces with the commitment of a prison warden. The water has been sitting in the cold room all night and has achieved a temperature roughly equivalent to whatever is just above ice. You wash your face anyway. The shock of cold water on skin pulls you into the day. Your hands are already chapping at the knuckles from the dryness. Autumn in New York is not gentle, and the hand cream you're supposed to use is the store's demonstration stock, which you are not supposed to take home, which you do anyway. Small amounts, guilty amounts, because your hands are demonstrating products all day, and the alkaline water and the constant application and removal of testing samples is doing something unpleasant to your skin. You look in the mirror above the dresser. Your face looks back at you, slightly blurred in the imperfect glass. 23 seconds to assess. Circles under your eyes from last night's poor sleep. Skin that is decent enough but dry at the cheeks in the way that makes Mrs. Fitch say, "You look a little tired, Agnes," in the tone that means you look unpresentable. Hair that needs pinning, everything needing to be reconstructed. This is the part nobody tells you about selling beauty. You have to embody it. Every demonstrator at the Helena Rubenstein counter is expected to appear as a living advertisement for the products. Skin that glows with health. Eyes that are defined but not theatrical. Lips that are coloured but tasteful. Hair that is fashionable but disciplined. And you have to achieve this by 8 a.m. in a room the size of a generous closet with cold water and a mirror that has one dark spot in the lower left corner where the silver has gone. You begin. Cosmetics in 1925 are simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. That's the contradiction at the heart of everything you do, every single day. Let me explain. In 1890, a respectable woman in America did not wear paint on her face. I mean paint in the specific sense. Visible cosmetics, rouge, lip colour, eye enhancement. The women who painted their faces were actresses, certain kinds of actresses, women of loose moral character, ladies of the evening, women who had made particular choices about how they intended to navigate the world. Choices that polite society did not endorse. A decent woman's beauty was supposed to be natural. It was supposed to be the outward expression of inner virtue. Rosy cheeks from fresh air and clean living. Clear eyes from a clear conscience. Good colour from good blood. Cosmetics were considered the tools of deception, of artifice, of making yourself into something you weren't for the purpose of attracting male attention under false pretenses. There were actual legal cases where men sued for divorce on the grounds that their wives had deceived them with cosmetics before marriage and turned out to be considerably less attractive afterward. This was a real thing. People took it seriously. And then things started to shift. Not all at once. Not with a proclamation or a revolution. Just gradually the way all cultural shifts actually happen. Quietly, until suddenly they're everywhere, and everyone pretends it was always this way. The movies happen, moving pictures, and the women on screen are wearing extraordinary quantities of cosmetics because the cameras require it. The early film stocks eat faces, flatten them, require exaggerated features to read at all on screen. So the actresses wear heavy kohl and powder and lip stain, and the audience watches them entranced 2 hours at a time in the darkened theatre, and somewhere in the collective American female consciousness, a connection is being made. She looks like that, and she uses cosmetics. Maybe cosmetics aren't sinful. Maybe they're glamorous. The war happens, the Great War, and women go to work in factories and offices and hospitals, and they are out in the world in ways they weren't before, and they need to present themselves in that world, and the old rules start to feel like a dress that no longer fits. And then the 20s happen. Jazz, flappers, the vote. Barely 5 years ago, in 1920, women in America finally got the right to vote. The Volstead Act makes alcohol illegal and immediately makes it fascinating. Hemlines go up, hair gets cut short, everything is in motion, and cosmetics ride this wave like a champion surfer. By 1925, the American cosmetics industry is worth approximately $141 million a year. Let me put that differently. $141 million in a country where the average annual salary is about $1,200. But here's the thing. Here's the thing that makes your job simultaneously important and impossible. Cosmetics are still, in 1925, considered vaguely disreputable by a significant portion of American society. Small-town churches preach against them. Editorials are written about the painted women corrupting the nation's morals. Mothers warn daughters, fathers disapprove, and the daughters buy the cold cream anyway. They buy it in secret. They buy it under pretexts. They come to your counter in Wanamaker's and they examine the products with the casual air of someone who has merely wandered past and happened to stop. And they ask questions in low voices, as if the asking itself is a small transgression. They want to want this. They just want permission to want it. That's what you're selling. Not cold cream, permission. By 7:15 you are dressed and as done as you're going to. Get with what you have available. The navy blue dress that is Wanamaker's unofficial uniform for beauty demonstrators. They don't call it a uniform, they call it a professional standard, but the result is the same. Navy blue with a white collar. Simple. The idea is that you shouldn't compete with the products you're selling. You should be a clean background against which the products can shine. Your hair is pinned up in the style that Mrs. Fitch demonstrated on the first day, which took her 45 seconds and takes you 12 minutes and never comes out quite as smooth. Your face. Your face is an exercise in professional constraint, a dusting of Rachel powder. Rochelle number 2, 1 shade warmer than your natural skin tone, which creates an impression of warmth without reading as painted in the way that would make customers uncomfortable. A small amount of rouge blended carefully at the cheekbones, not the circles that the fashion illustrations show, but a true blending swept back toward the temples. Your lips, a discreet application of a red that is technically called rose coral, but which you privately think of as the colour of warning. You look at yourself in the mirror. You look nothing like you did at home. You look like a version of yourself that has been professionally edited. This is apparently the point. You eat a piece of bread standing up in the kitchen, Mrs. Pelletier's kitchen, which residents may use between 6 and 8 in the morning and 6 and 8 in the evening, governed by a clock on the wall and Mrs. Pelletier's personal interpretation of it, and you drink black coffee from a cup that has seen considerably better days, and you stand at the window and watch West 28th Street coming to life in the October cold. Delivery men, a cat, a newsboy who is perhaps 11 years old, shouting headlines with the confident authority of a senator. The flower sellers are just beginning to set up on the corner, their breath visible in the cold air as they arrange chrysanthemums and dahlias in tin buckets on the pavement. You collect your coat, your bag, your gloves. You let yourself out into the morning. Manhattan in October 1925 at 7:30 in the morning is a particular kind of magnificent chaos. And when I say chaos, I need you to understand what that means in 1925 New York. This isn't modern crowded. This isn't a busy subway platform where you have to turn sideways to get through the doors. This is the full, ungoverned, democratic chaos of a city that is growing so fast it can't quite keep up with itself. First, the noise. It starts the moment you step outside. The city doesn't build to noise, it starts there and goes louder. Horse-drawn carts still work alongside automobiles. Not as many horses as 10 years ago, but still enough that the street smells of them. That particular warm animal smell that mingles with exhaust fumes and coal smoke and the sweet rot of vegetable matter from the pushcarts. The automobiles honk. The horses' hooves make a particular clipping rhythm on the cobblestones, a counterpoint to the mechanical sounds. The elevated railway, the EEL, runs on 9th Avenue, and when it passes like a mechanical storm. Iron on iron, the grind and screech of wheels, the whole structure shaking, and the street below briefly in shadow, and then it's gone, leaving a silence that only feels like silence by comparison. You've learned to time your conversations to miss the L. The streets around 28th Street are commercial streets, which means they're working streets. This block is the flower district, or it will be, it's becoming it now. And in the mornings the sidewalks are hazardous with crates of flowers, streams of water from the washing of buckets, the occasional escaped stem of something fragrant that's been crushed under a delivery boot. You walk south and east toward Broadway, keeping to the side of the buildings where the foot traffic is densest and therefore paradoxically faster. The herding effect. Everyone moving in roughly the same direction at roughly the same speed. People press close. Wool coats. The smell of someone's hair pomade. A woman with a mink stole who clearly lives somewhere considerably nicer than West 28th, walking very fast and trailing expensive perfume. Tuberose and something powdery, definitely French, definitely not available at your counter. The air tastes of coal. It always tastes of coal in October. Everyone's furnace is running, and the smoke layers itself in the streets between the buildings in a way that makes the light hazy and golden and slightly sinister. If you blow your nose at the end of the day, and this is a detail I apologize for but you deserve to know, the result is grey. You cut through an alley past a bakery whose oven exhaust is so warm and bread-scented, you slow involuntarily, just for a moment, just to stand in the warm breath of it before moving on. And then you see it. Not Wanamaker's yet. You're still blocks away. But you can see the Woolworth building. You see it every morning from this angle, the spire visible above everything else. And every morning it does the same thing to your chest. Arrests it. Just for a second. The Woolworth building, completed in 1913, was the tallest building in the world when it went up. And it held that title until 1930. Right now, in 1925, it is still the tallest building in the world, 792 feet from the ground to the tip of the spire, 57 floors of terracotta-clad steel, designed by architect Cass Gilbert, who was told by Frank Woolworth, the 5 and dime king, the man who made his fortune selling everything for a nickel or a dime, that he wanted something Gothic, something that would look like a cathedral, and he got it. Because it does. It looks like a cathedral in the sense that all great Gothic things make you feel small, in a way that is somehow simultaneously diminishing and expanding. It makes you feel the right size of the universe, which is to say, very small. The terracotta is green at this hour, in this light. The arches and gargoyles catch the low October sun from the east. The spire disappears into a faint haze of coal smoke. Frank Woolworth, by the way, paid for the building in cash. $13,600,000 cash. Because he had it. Because he sold things for a nickel at a time and did it so many times, it added up to $13 million. You think about that sometimes. The nickel at a time that adds up to something remarkable. Your cold cream is $1.50. Or it will be once you sell it. You walk faster. The clock on a bank says 7:51. Wanamaker's department store occupies an entire city block on Broadway between 9th and 10th Streets, and it is in 1925 one of the grandest retail establishments in the world. John Wanamaker, who died 4 years ago in 1922 at the age of 84, was a retail genius and a complicated man. He invented, or at least popularized, the price tag, the concept that goods have a fixed price, marked clearly, not subject to negotiation. Before Wanamaker, buying something at a shop involved a negotiation that disadvantaged anyone who wasn't good at negotiating, which is to say, anyone who wasn't wealthy, confident, or male. A fixed price meant a poor woman and a rich woman paid the same amount for the same thing. Wanamaker also invented the sales receipt, the money-back guarantee, and the department store restaurant. He put the first telephone in a store. He put in the first pneumatic tube system for transporting cash. He was also a deeply, profoundly religious man who closed his stores on Sundays, who taught Sunday school for 60 years, and who disapproved strenuously of women wearing cosmetics. The beauty counter in his flagship New York store, which began carrying cosmetics in 1922, would have horrified him. History contains multitudes. You enter through the service entrance on the 10th Street side, which is where the demonstrators and counter staff arrive. The Grand Broadway entrance is for customers, not for the people who serve them. The service corridor is narrow and smells of cleaning solution, and the particular backstage smell of a large building. Steam pipes, freight elevator grease, the faint mustiness of stock rooms. You pass 2 stock boys with dolly carts, and a woman from the hat department who you've learned is named Doris, and who never speaks before 9 in the morning on principle, a principle you deeply respect. The beauty counter is on the ground floor, near the Broadway entrance, but not at it. Positioned so that customers sweeping through the store on their way to other departments must pass it, must be offered the scent of the testers, must slow or not slow, and in slowing be engaged. The counter itself is a long glass case, maybe 12 feet, lit from within and above, on the glass surface, arranged with precision that Mrs. Fitch checks each morning with the quiet attention of a general inspecting troops, are the demonstration items. Jars open to the correct angle to display the cream within. Lipstick cases standing at parade rest. Powder compacts splayed open. Perfume bottles arranged by height, ascending like a city skyline in miniature. Behind the glass, on shelves lined with white paper that is changed every Monday, the stock, organized by product line, by shade, by size, and behind the counter, already there, already standing with her hands clasped in front of her, already looking at the clock on the pillar across the aisle. Mrs. Harriet Fitch. Mrs. Fitch is 47 years old. She is 5 feet 4 inches tall and carries herself like someone who is 5 feet 9. She has dark hair going silver at the temples that she wears in a precise chignon, and a face that was once conventionally pretty and is now something considerably more authoritative. Her hands are always immaculate, always gloved until the moment she steps behind the counter, at which point she removes her gloves with the deliberateness of a surgeon and places them in her coat pocket, and her bare hands are extraordinary. The hands of someone who has been applying and demonstrating beauty products for 22 years, who has touched thousands of faces, who knows exactly what she's doing. She's been at Wanamaker's since 1910. She worked for Elizabeth Arden before that, and she will sometimes mention this in a tone that implies she departed on her own terms, which you have been told by Dorothea from the fragrance counter is probably not exactly what happened, but you have the sense to take this with appropriate scepticism. "You're here," Mrs. Fitch says, when you come through the door to the back room. It is 7:59. She does not specify what she means by this. You do not ask. "Good morning, Mrs. Fitch. Your cheekbones are uneven, more blending on the left." You go to the small mirror on the backroom wall. There is always a mirror in the back room of a beauty counter, a very good mirror, because the counter staff must be the product, and you look, and she is correct. The left cheekbone has a slightly harder edge. You take a blending brush and soften it. "Better," she says, which is the closest she comes to approval. You come out from behind the counter and take your place at the far end, which is your section, the skin care. Cleansers, toners, cold creams, the therapeutic products, the foundation of the Helena Rubenstein philosophy, which is that beautiful skin begins with treatment, not decoration. Madame Rubenstein, that's what you call her. That's what everyone calls her, Madame, though she is Helena and was born in Krakow in 1872 to a Jewish family and came to Australia and then Paris and then New York and built something extraordinary from nothing, something we will absolutely get back to. Madame Rubenstein believes that cosmetics are scientific, that they are medicine, that skincare is a matter of chemistry and biology, not vanity. This is a brilliant piece of marketing and also partially true, and she actually believes it, which makes it more effective as marketing. You straighten the jars on your section, the Valaz skin food, the crème ganoine, the pasteurized face cream, which has never been pasteurized in the conventional sense but benefits from the association with Louis Pasteur's respectable scientific reputation, the blackhead and pore lotion, the muscular beauty musk, each jar's paper label, the list of ingredients, or rather, the list of ingredients that sounds impressive, the direction to apply nightly with gentle circular motions, the price, which varies from 75 cents for the basic cleanser to $3.50 for the youth-generating cellular complex, which you once asked Mrs. Fitch what cellular meant in this context, and she looked at you with an expression that suggested you had asked a question that was not useful to your employment. "It means the cells of the skin are supported," she said. "By what mechanism?" "By the mechanism of the formula." You did not ask further. The store opens at 9. You have 1 hour. I want to talk about what cold cream actually is, because you're going to spend all day talking about it, and you should know what you're talking about. Cold cream is, at its root, an emulsion. A water in oil emulsion, specifically. What that means is, you have a fatty or waxy base, historically white wax or beeswax, mineral oil, and you have a watery phase, and you use an emulsifier to combine them into a stable white cream that is neither fully fatty nor fully watery. The basic formula has existed since the 2nd century AD. Galen of Pergamon, the Greek physician, is generally credited with the first version. He mixed beeswax, olive oil, and water. When you apply it to skin and the water evaporates, you feel a cooling sensation. That's the cold. That's where the name comes from, cold cream. In the interim 1700 years, the formula had been refined and elaborated and complicated and simplified and complicated again, and names have been attached to it and money has been made from it, but the essential chemistry has not changed dramatically. What has changed is everything surrounding the chemistry. What has changed is the story. The story is the product. Madame Rubenstein's skincare line, the Velaz products, are sold on the basis of a story about a Polish peasant woman, or sometimes a Hungarian noblewoman, or sometimes an Alpine shepherdess. The origin story varies with the telling, who had extraordinary skin due to a secret herbal formula that Madame Rubenstein discovered and brought to the modern world. The actual modern world contains mineral oil, which is a petroleum byproduct, and was not, in fairness, available to medieval shepherdesses. But the story works, because the story speaks to something real, the desire for transformation, the belief that somewhere, something exists that will fix the problem you have with your face, if only you can find it. You are the person who tells them you found it. The first customer arrives at 9:03. She comes directly to your section, which means she's been before, or she's been told, or she's been building up to this and knows exactly where she's going. You clock all of this in the first 2 seconds. Purpose of stride, direction of gaze, quality of coat. The coat is good, not exceptional. The exceptional coats are in the next tax bracket up, but good. The woman is perhaps 35, wearing the kind of careful makeup that suggests she knows what she's doing but hasn't had professional guidance recently. Her cheeks are slightly too pink. Her powder has sunk into the fine lines around her eyes in a way that could be corrected with better primer. Good morning, you say. Can I help you? Find something. Not. Can I help you? You're always helping. The question is what you're helping them find. She hesitates. There's always a hesitation. Even the customers who came in knowing exactly what they want hesitate, because there's a social transaction happening that hasn't quite completed yet. She is assessing whether you're safe, whether you'll judge her, whether the store is going to try to embarrass her into buying something she can't afford. I was wondering about she begins and gestures vaguely at the jars. I've been having trouble with dryness. Here. She touches her cheekbones. The skin there is tight-looking, slightly flaky at the edges. October air, you say immediately, warmly, with the certainty of diagnosis. It's the sudden temperature change. The skin hasn't adjusted from summer to fall, and the heated air inside doesn't help. It strips moisture. She looks at you with relief, because what you've just done is take her problem and made it universal, normal, not a flaw of hers, but a condition of the season. You've removed the shame from it. Exactly, she says. It started last week. May I? You gesture toward the tester jar of Valet's skin food. I can show you what we're using for this specifically. She extends her hand, forearm up, and you open the skin food and take a very small amount on the back of your finger. The back, not the front. Always use the back, Mrs. Fitch drilled this, because the back is cleaner. And you apply it to her inner forearm, where the skin is thin and will show the cream's behaviour quickly. This is a heavier emollient than a standard day cream, you tell her, as you blend it in with the lightest possible pressure. You'd use this at night. The wax base creates an occlusive layer. You've borrowed this word from a pamphlet and you use it carefully. It sounds medical. It sounds like knowledge. That prevents further moisture loss while you sleep. The skin has a chance to Repair. Her arm looks better already. Of course it does. Any cream would make dry skin look temporarily better. The cream is not magic, it is lubricant. But the looking better is real. She's looking at it. Does it feel heavy? She asks. When you first apply it, there's a richness to it. By morning, your skin has absorbed what it needs. This is approximately true. I'd pair it with a lighter day cream, the crème ganoine, for your morning routine. The combination addresses different phases of the skin's daily cycle. Madame Rubenstein talks about the skin cycle in her literature. This is again real science, approximately. Skin does have diurnal rhythms. This is not fully understood in 1925, but the intuition is correct. The woman buys the skin food, 90 cents. You wrap it in tissue, place it in a white bag with the Helena Rubenstein logo, a stylized HR in burgundy, and hand it over with both hands, which is a gesture Mrs. Fitch insisted upon. Both hands means you're treating the item with respect, means you value the exchange. You'll see a difference in about a week, you say. The flakiness should resolve by day 4 or 5. She leaves looking lighter. That's the only way you can describe it. She came in looking slightly defeated by her own skin, and she's leaving looking like a woman who has a plan. This is what nobody tells you about selling beauty products. Sometimes it actually works. Not always, though. By mid-morning, you've served 7 customers, sold 4 products, demonstrated 12, and had a conversation with a woman who spent 45 minutes at your counter, handling every single tester and asking questions with the precision of a scientist, and then bought nothing, absolutely nothing, said, "I'll think about it," and left. This happens constantly. Mrs. Fitch calls these women the browsers, and says it with the carefully neutral tone of someone refraining from a stronger word. You've also had a woman who came in asking specifically for a skin bleaching cream. I want to stop here and be honest with you, because you deserve honesty. Skin bleaching products in 1925 are a significant part of the beauty industry, and they're aimed not just at one specific group of women. The advertising for these products in 1925 promises to fade sallowness or discoloration or muddy complexion in white women, and promises lighter, brighter skin in marketing aimed at black women. And there's a separate and deeply troubling vein of advertising aimed at immigrant communities, at Jewish women, at Italian women, at any woman whose skin colour doesn't conform to a narrow WASP standard that the industry is busily defining as beautiful and normal. Madame Rubenstein sells a skin-lightening cream. So does Elizabeth Arden. So does Pond's. So does virtually every major cosmetics company. The active ingredient is often mercury, sometimes arsenic, sometimes compound called hydroquinone, which is the most effective and is also, we now know, a potential carcinogen. The women who buy these products are not stupid. They're responding to a cultural message that is being broadcast from every magazine, every movie screen, every fashion illustration, every department store window. The message says, there is one kind of beautiful, and if you are not it by nature, you should become it by purchase. The beauty industry creates the problem and sells the solution. This is perhaps the most honest thing I can tell you about the 1920s beauty business. The industry doesn't just respond to women's insecurities, it manufactures them, identifies them, gives them names, and then offers remedies. You have the skin lightening cream in your section. You have sold it. You will sell it again today. The woman asking about it has freckles, a constellation across her nose and cheekbones, entirely natural, entirely harmless. She's perhaps 25 and she hates them with a passion that is not her fault and which the beauty counter has been encouraging through its advertising for the past several years. You show her the product, you go through the application, you explain the time frame. Gradual results over several weeks. She buys 2 jars. After she leaves, you straighten the jars on your section, and you don't think about it further, because if you think about it further, you will think about what exactly is in those jars and whether the gradual results come with gradual damage. And this is not a thought that is useful to your continued employment, but you have it anyway, just quickly, just for a moment. And then the next customer arrives, and your hands find the tester, and your voice finds the warmth, and you begin again. Lunchtime arrives like a small rescue. 12 o'clock. Mrs. Fitch says lunch, and does not say it like she means it warmly, but she says it, and you and Dorothea from the fragrance counter have long since formed an alliance of convenience. You eat together, you walk fast together, you're back before 12:45 together. The lunch you've brought is 2 pieces of bread with a thin scraping of the potted chicken paste from the tin in Mrs. Pelletier's kitchen, wrapped in newspaper, in your bag. You eat it on a bench on Broadway because the weather today is cold but dry, and the movement of air feels necessary after a morning of the counter's close, perfumed atmosphere. Dorothea is eating a sandwich she bought from the lunch cart on 9th Street. It smells of mustard and something meat-related. Woman tried to return a used powder compact this morning, Dorothea says. Said it made her sneeze. Was it making her sneeze? She had clearly used every single last trace of powder in it first. The pan was empty. What did Mrs. Fenwick do? Mrs. Fenwick runs the cosmetics section. Smiled and refunded it. Wanamaker's policy. John Wanamaker's policy. Satisfaction guaranteed or money returned. You can see why this is good retail policy. You can also see why it creates situations like the empty powder compact. You eat your bread and potted chicken and watch Broadway. There are moments in this city, brief specific moments, when you understand completely why you came. When the light is a certain way, or the sounds arrange themselves into something almost musical, or you see something particular. A woman in a brilliant red coat striding across the street, against traffic with absolute confidence, or a child pressing their nose against the window of a toy shop, breath fogging the glass, or 2 old men playing chess on a folding board propped on a shipping crate, completely absorbed, the city crashing around them like a river around rocks. The city contains the specific joy of being anonymous, of being no one in particular. In Dayton, you were Agnes Calloway, Walter Calloway's daughter, the girl from the house on Maple Street where they keep the hydrangeas, where the mother is a bit of an invalid now. You had a history that preceded you into every room. Here nobody knows your history. Here you're making it in real time. You finish your bread. Back, Dorothea says. Back, you say. Mid-afternoon arrives with a particular kind of heaviness. Your feet have been hurting since 11 and have progressed through hurt into a duller, more continuous ache that you've learned to not pay attention to, in the same way you've learned not to pay attention to the particular smell of the counter after several hours. The layered, mingled scent of all the testers, which becomes by 2 in the afternoon less rose garden and more somewhere chemicals live. Your feet hurt because you stand all day. There is nowhere to sit behind the counter. This is by design. Sitting is not done. Sitting implies that you have nothing better to do than sit, when what you should be doing is standing at alert, ready to approach, radiating the welcoming availability of someone who has answers to questions the customer hasn't asked yet. You have been standing for approximately 5 hours. You would give a notable sum of money for a stool. But this is not a thought that serves any practical purpose, so you adjust your weight from the right foot to the left and watch the store floor and wait. The afternoon brings different customers from the morning. The morning brings women who are running errands, purposeful, efficient. The afternoon brings women who have more time, who have been thinking about something all day and have finally given themselves permission to come in and look. These are sometimes the best conversations and sometimes the most exhausting. This afternoon, at approximately 2:30, a young woman, 19, maybe 20, not much older than you, stops at your section with a particular frozen look of someone who's never done this before. She's wearing a plain coat, brown wool, nothing special. Her shoes are practical. Her hair is pulled back simply. No wave, no curl, no cosmetics at all, which means she's either coming from a job that doesn't allow them, or she's from a family that doesn't allow them, or she simply hasn't started yet, hasn't made that step across the line from natural to enhanced, which is a step that in 1925 is still, for a certain kind of young woman in a certain kind of household, a meaningful threshold. She looks at the jars. She looks at you. She looks at the jars. I've never, she begins, and then stops. You know this stop. You've learned this stop. You wait it out because filling it too quickly creates pressure, and pressure makes people leave. I'm not sure where to start, she finishes. That's perfectly all right, you say. Most people aren't. That's what I'm here for. She relaxes, just slightly. Her shoulders come down 1/2 inch. My friend said I should try rouge, she says. But I'm not. My mother thinks. Another stop. May I ask what you're hoping to get from it? You keep your voice even, academic almost. A question between equals. She thinks about this seriously, which you appreciate. I'm going to a dance, she says. Saturday, and I wanted to look more. She waves a hand. I don't know. More finished. More finished. It's a perfect phrase and nobody taught it to her. She found it herself. You have good bone structure, you tell her, which is true. Strong cheekbones, good brow line. The idea with rouge isn't to add something that isn't there. It's to bring out what already is. She's listening with her whole face. Can I show you something? Just on your hand to start. She extends her hand and you take the gentlest, palest rouge, the pink blossom, which reads almost imperceptibly on fair skin. Not the rose red that's popular, but would be too much for a first try, too theatrical, would frighten her. And you put the smallest possible amount on the back of your brush and touch it to her cheekbone over the back of her hand. She looks at her hand. Oh, she says. Just. Oh. It's subtle, you say. You build it. Start with less than you think and see. She buys the pink blossom. She also, after some careful conversation, buys a small pressed powder, just to set things, nothing theatrical, and a lip salve that is technically a cosmetic product, being very slightly tinted, but which you describe as protective for autumn weather, which gets her comfortable with the purchase in a way that lip colour wouldn't have. Total sale, $1.40. Not as high as Mrs. Fitch would like, probably. But the girl leaves, and she's walking differently, and you notice this because you've started to notice this, how the women walk differently after. Slightly taller, like they've been handed something. Let me tell you about Madame Rubenstein. Helena Rubenstein was born in 1872 in Krakow. then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. She was the eldest of 8 daughters. She was educated. She was trained at some point with some degree of chemistry. The exact details of her education vary depending on who's telling the story and when. She came to Australia in 1902 to Coleraine in Victoria, a remote rural town where a relative had arranged a position for her. She brought with her some jars of a face cream. An emollient formula from a Polish chemist, she always said. The details of its origin are disputed. What is not disputed is that Australian women, whose skin was being destroyed by the harsh sun and wind, and the particular unforgiving brightness of an Australian rural summer, were desperate for something to address this. Helena Rubenstein had something. She sold it. She made more. She opened a salon in Melbourne in 1903. She was 31 years old and she was building an empire from a jar of face cream. By 1908 she was in London. By 1914 Paris. By 1915 New York. By the time you were standing at Wanamaker's counter in 1925, Helena Rubenstein has salons in London, Paris, Brussels, Berlin, and several American cities, employs hundreds of people, and has a personal fortune that puts her among the wealthiest self-made women in the world. She did this by understanding several things simultaneously. She understood that women wanted to be told that their skin was a problem with the solution, not a permanent condition of their biology. She understood that science, real science with its laboratories and formulas and Latin-sounding names, could be deployed as reassurance, and that women who'd been told for generations that paying attention to their appearance was vanity would pay for it readily if it was reframed as healthcare. She understood that luxury and aspiration were as potent in a jar of face cream as any active ingredient, and she understood, with the particular clarity of an immigrant woman who had built something from nothing against considerable odds, that the beauty industry was not about beauty. It was about hope. Every woman can be beautiful, she would say, and this was radical in 1925. Not every woman with the right bone structure, or every woman of the right type. Every woman. The business model depends on you believing you need improvement, but the philosophy, taken at face value, is genuinely democratic. It's a contradiction. The whole thing is a contradiction, and you spend your days inside it. By 4 p.m, the light through the Broadway windows has gone golden low, and the counter is quieter. The rush of the afternoon shoppers is tapering. Mrs. Fitch moves down the counter, checking stock levels, making notes in her small ledger. You are restocking the tester jars, wiping the edges of each one with a clean cloth, ensuring no dried residue is built up at the rim, ensuring the surface of each product is smooth and unbroken. Virginal, Mrs. Fitch calls it, which you find a peculiar word choice for a face cream when she stops beside you. You did well today, she says. You look up. In 3 months, Mrs. Fitch has said this to you. Twice. The first time was also a Tuesday. Thank you, Mrs. Fitch. The girl this afternoon, the one in the brown coat. You'd thought she wasn't watching that. She'd never bought anything before, you say. First time. I could tell. A pause. Mrs. Fitch examines the tester jar you've just wiped. Puts it down. You didn't push her. She would have left. Most of them would have pushed anyway. Most of them see a sale or they see nothing. She's quiet for a moment. You see the woman. You don't know what to say to this. It matters, Mrs. Fitch says. Not for reasons I can entirely justify to management, but it matters. Women who are seen come back, Women who are sold at do not come back. This business runs on loyalty. She picks up her ledger and moves on down the counter. You go back to the tester jars. Your hands are steadier than you'd expect. You've been standing for 8 hours and your feet are genuinely suffering, and the tip of your left index finger is numb in a way that might be concerning, and your back has a particular complaint focused between the shoulder blades. But something Mrs. Fitch just said is sitting in your chest, warm and heavy, like a coal. You see the woman. The store closes at 6. The beauty counter has its own closing ritual. Inventory, restocking, wiping down all surfaces with a diluted cleaning solution, replenishing the testers, replacing the tissue paper in the demonstration trays. This takes 30 minutes. You and Mrs. Fitch do it together in near silence, moving with the efficiency of people who've done this enough times that the tasks divide themselves. By 6:40 you're in the back room, off with the store navy, on with your own coat, gloves on. The particular relief of a garment that belongs to you rather than to a professional role. Mrs. Fitch is writing in her ledger at the small table in the corner the day's numbers. You can't quite see the figures, but from the set of her shoulders they are slightly more relaxed than this morning. It was a decent day. Tomorrow, she says without looking up, we're doing a demonstration. At the counter. In store. Mrs. Fenwick has arranged for a group. Ladies from the 13th Street Club, 18 women arriving at 2 o'clock for a group demonstration of the Valet's skincare line. She makes a note. You'll lead the complexion analysis portion. Your stomach moves, not unpleasantly but noticeably, leading, not assisting. What's the complexion analysis? I'll walk you through it in the morning. It's straightforward. You examine the skin, identify type, dry, oily, combination, sensitive, and recommend the appropriate regimen. The key is to make every woman feel her skin is unique and requires specific attention. Even if 2 of them have the same skin type, especially then, she looks up. Agnes. Yes, ma'am. They're not buying a cream. What are they buying? It's a test. You've had enough of these by now to recognize them. The feeling of being understood, you say. She nods once. Good night. Outside, Broadway is in full early evening mode. The theatre crowds won't arrive for another hour or 2, but the street lamps are on already. The new electric ones that replace the old gas lamps and make the sidewalk a brighter, colder kind of light. Automobiles. The L somewhere overhead. The smell of roasted chestnuts from the vendor on the corner, which is the smell of October in New York. The smell you will associate with this time of your life for the rest of it. You buy a bag of chestnuts for a nickel. You eat them walking, the paper bag hot in your hands, the steam rising from the scored shells. You burn your fingers. You don't care. Vera said she'd be home by 7 and they could go to the pictures if you wanted. There's something with Greta Garbo at the Criterion that Vera has been wanting to see. Or there's the lecture at the YWCA about nutrition and health for working women, which Vera pointed out is probably not as interesting as Greta Garbo but might be more useful. You don't decide yet. You walk, you eat your chestnuts, you let the city move around you. But I want to stop here before we get home, because there's something you need to see. Something that explains more about what you do all day than any amount of sales technique. We need to go to the factory, not tonight. Tonight you go to the pictures, because you're 19 and Greta Garbo is playing, and the world will not end if you choose Greta Garbo over a nutrition lecture, and you buy a bag of popcorn in the theatre lobby, and Vera translates the title cards that are partially in German, because this is a Swedish-German production, and there's a bit in the middle where she's speaking Swedish in close-up, and even the title cards seem uncertain, and it's all magnificent, and afterward you walk home in the cold dark feeling glamorous by association. But I said we need to go to the factory, and we do. A different day. Specifically the following Saturday, when Mrs. Fitch gives you the day off to travel to New Jersey because a sales representative from the Rubenstein company is hosting a product education day at the manufacturing facility in Union, New Jersey. A half day for counter staff and demonstrators from stores in the area so that they can see and understand the products they sell. It's framed as a privilege. Mrs. Fitch frames it as a privilege. You think it's partly a privilege and partly the fact that what you don't know can hurt the company's sales. And making sure you know the right things is just good manufacturing to consumer communication. It takes 40 minutes by train from Penn Station. The factory is not what you pictured. I'm not sure what you pictured. Something clean, maybe. White-tiled, scientific, rows of glass equipment. The factory in Union, New Jersey is a large brick building on an unremarkable street near the rail lines. It smells from half a block away of warm wax and rose oil, and something beneath those, a chemical smell, not quite medical, not quite industrial, but adjacent to both. There are 8 of you on this trip. You, 2 girls from another department store, a woman from a salon in Brooklyn who sells Rubenstein products, 2 men who sell to pharmacies, and a girl named Charlotte, who demonstrates at a Rubenstein salon on Fifth Avenue, and who is dressed with a precision and elegance that makes you feel like you arrived in your working clothes, which you did. The facility manager, a compact, efficient man named Mr. Bergson, who has the manner of someone who has given this tour 30 times and is now executing it with the accuracy of a machine, walks you through the building. First, the receiving area. Raw materials. The wax comes from bees or from petroleum, depending on the formula. The oils, mineral oil predominantly arriving in drums. Rose oil in small and enormously precious quantities from Bulgaria. Attar of roses, 30 pounds of which require approximately 2 tons of rose petals to produce, which is why the rose oil is kept in a locked cabinet, and Mr. Bergson mentions this with the quiet pride of a man whose company can afford to keep rose oil in a locked cabinet. Borax, glycerin, various emulsifying agents, which are the molecules that make oil and water stay combined rather than separating, which is the technical challenge at the heart of cold cream. You are fundamentally trying to combine 2 things that don't want to be combined, and the emulsifier is what convinces them, chemically speaking, to cooperate. Pigments for the rouge and lip products, mineral pigments mostly, iron oxides for reds and browns, ultramarines for the cooler tones, titanium dioxide for the whites and flesh tones. The pigments are in sealed glass jars and are breathtaking in a slightly alarming way. Pure, concentrated colour, not anything you'd want near your skin directly, but processed and diluted and combined with the other ingredients into something that becomes, eventually, the pink blossom you sold to the girl in the brown coat. You're watching a worker move drums of mineral oil with a hand truck, and the chemical smell is stronger here, overlaid with the sweetness of glycerin, and underneath all of it something darker, not unpleasant exactly, but insistent, the smell of production, of materials becoming things. Second, the mixing room. This is the heart of the factory and also the part that is hardest to reconcile with the counter at Wanamaker's. Large metal vats, maybe 4 feet across, steam heating from below. Women, there are women doing most of the production work, stirring the contents with long paddles. or rather, monitoring the machinery that stirs because the vats have mechanical agitators, but the agitators require watching, and the watching requires women who know what they're looking at. The cream at this stage is not cream. It's a pale, loose mixture, somewhat grainy in texture, with an oily sheen. It smells. It smells more intensely of everything. The rose oil concentrated, the mineral oil base present beneath it, the borax slightly acrid. One of the workers has a cloth over her nose. Others seem accustomed. The process takes time. The wax phase is heated separately from the water phase. When both reach the correct temperature, the water phase is added to the wax phase, not the other way around. And this, Mr. Bergson explains with genuine technical pride, is the key to the emulsion stability. The addition rate matters, the mixing speed matters, the temperature matters. You watch a vat of what will eventually become Vala's skin food, the cream you sell being processed. The woman monitoring it has hands that are rough from years of contact with these materials. Her fingernails are clean, but her knuckles are reddened, slightly enlarged. She's been doing this for, you'd guess, a decade or more. She knows what she's looking at in that vat, without Mr. Bergson's explanations. She knows by sight, by sound, by smell, what stage the process is at and what it needs. She hasn't looked at the tour group since you came in. Third, filling and packaging. The finished cream, cooled and finished and tested. There is a quality control step where samples from each batch are sent to a small laboratory off the main floor, is pumped into jars on a filling line. Glass jars, coming down a conveyor from a box, filled, capped, labelled, boxed. The label is applied by a machine, but a woman sits at the end of the line to check each label. Centred, straight, undamaged. Jars that don't pass go back. There aren't many that don't pass. The woman is very fast. You watch a jar of Valais skin food pass from filling to capping to labelling. 90 cents. Your customer this morning paid 90 cents. You look at the jar. You look at the vat. You look at the woman stirring. You look at the woman labelling. Any questions? Mr. Bergson asks. Charlotte from Fifth Avenue asks something technical about the rose oil procurement, and Mr. Bergson is delighted by this. The two pharmacy salesmen are conferring with each other in low voices. You're looking at the jar on the conveyor. You sell that jar as transformation, as science, as Madame Helena Rubenstein's proprietary formula derived from Polish peasant wisdom and cutting-edge dermatological chemistry. You sell it as hope, and it is hope, and it is also wax and oil and borax and rose scent, assembled by women with red knuckles in a factory in New Jersey. Both of these things are true. Both of them are the product. On the train back to Penn Station, you sit next to the girl from Brooklyn. Her name is Frances, it turns out, and she's been selling Rubenstein products from her salon for 3 years and has done this factory tour before. First time? She asks. That obvious? She smiles. You have the look, like you're trying to add something up and the numbers won't quite go. Does it bother you? You ask, knowing what's in the jars? Frances looks out the window. The New Jersey marshes are flat and grey-brown and beautiful in a desolate way. The grass is moving in the October wind, the sky enormous above them. Here's the thing, she says. The women I sell to. They come in with their skin in all kinds of states, sun-damaged, dry, uneven. Some of them are in their 60s, and they've never once in their lives done anything for their skin beyond washing it with soap that's too alkaline and leaving it in the wind. And I put a moisturizing cream on them. She gestures. Something changes. I'm not saying I cure anything. I'm not Madame Rubenstein in her laboratory. I'm saying something softens. Something, they feel looked after. For maybe the first time. She turns back from the window. Her eyes are very clear. So do I care that it's mostly wax and oil? Not terribly. The feeling isn't wax and oil. The feeling is real. You nod. The train moves. Through the marshes. The light is failing outside, late afternoon going grey. The ones that bother me, Francis says quietly, are the bleaching creams. A silence. Yes, you say. I stopped carrying them, she says. In my salon. I just stopped. Mrs. Horowitz, she owns a salon. She wasn't happy. We had a conversation, but I stopped. The train goes into a tunnel, and the window goes dark. You're thinking about the woman with the freckles, the 2 jars. Saturday evening in New York is the city at its most itself. The working week is over, and the restraint that the working week requires, the professionalism, the measured pace, the careful presentation of self, falls away at 6 p.m. on Saturday like a coat being shrugged off. The streets have a different energy. The theatres are full, the restaurants are full, the cafeterias where working girls get their weekend dinners are full. Everything is full. You've arranged to meet Vera and 2 of Vera's friends from the factory. A girl named Millie who does quality control and a girl named Sophie who works in formulation, at a restaurant on 7th Avenue that does a chicken dinner for 35 cents and has enough tables that 4 women can sit at one without anyone making them feel they should move along. You tell them about the factory. Sophie, who works at a different cosmetics factory, the Revlon facility, where Vera also works, listens with professional interest. What's their cold cream base? She asks. Did Bergson say? He said mineral oil and beeswax. Every company says beeswax. Most of them are at least half paraffin wax by now. Cheaper, sets better on the filling line. She shrugs. It's fine. Paraffin's not worse, just different. They're both just occlusive agents. Occlusive, you say? It means it sits on the surface and stops water evaporating out of the skin. That's what cold cream does. It's like putting a lid on. That's what I tell customers. Sort of. I use the word differently. You use words that sell. I use words that are accurate. Sophie takes a piece of bread from the basket. Both necessary. Vera has been quiet through this exchange, eating her chicken with the efficiency of someone who has had a physical day's work and is genuinely hungry for protein. The factory I work at, she says after a moment. Millie and I, we've been there 4 years. 4 years in the formulation area. She taps her fingers on the table. I have a headache every Friday by noon. Every single Friday. From the solvents in the nail varnish formulation area. 3 of the women on our line have the same headache. A silence at the table. Have you told the foreman, you ask? Vera and Millie exchange a look that contains an entire conversation. We told the foreman, Millie says. He said the ventilation was adequate to regulations. Is it? It meets the 1919 factory safety standards, Sophie says. The 1919 standards don't have much to say about chronic low-level solvent exposure because in 1919 nobody knew much about chronic low-level solvent exposure. You look at Vera. Are you all right? The headaches go away by Sunday, Vera says, and I need the job. Another silence. Somewhere in this room full of women eating their Saturday dinner, the beauty industry is present at every table. In the powder on every nose, the rouge on several cheeks, the nail varnish, chipped or fresh, on most hands. It's there in the cold cream Vera applies every night. It's there in the headache she gets every Friday. The same jar, the same product, the woman who makes it, and the woman who sells it, and the woman who buys it, and the woman who applies it, and the woman who makes it. All of them part of the same system. Well, Millie says, reaching for the bread basket with her slightly reddened hands, at least the chicken's good. Millie reaches for the bread with her reddened hands, and the conversation shifts, not immediately. Gradually, the way October, light shifts. You don't catch the moment it changes, you just notice at some point that it's darker than it was. Millie tells them about her sister. She works at a pharmacy on Lexington Avenue, Millie says, wiping her fingers on a piece of bread crust. Counter girl, sells the over-the-counter things, the creams, the tonics, the bleaching preparations, whatever women come in asking for. And, says Vera, and she says some of them come back, after a month, with burning, with peeling. There was a woman, regular customer, 2 years buying the same bleaching cream, the same brand every time, who came in last spring. Millie looks at her plate. The skin on her face had gone thin. You could see the veins. She looked. Kathleen said she looked like something had eaten the surface off. A silence at the table. Sophie is very still. Mercury compound, she asks, in the tone of someone asking a technical question to avoid thinking about the rest of it. Kathleen looked at the label afterward. She said she couldn't tell. The ingredients were listed in the language they use, you know, the Latin names. She recognized a few things, not all of it. Mercury shows up as mercurous chloride, Sophie says, or calomel, or ammoniated mercury. They use different names on different labels, she pauses. It works, that's the problem. It actually works. Suppresses the melanin production, lightens the skin, and then it keeps suppressing, and the kidneys start processing it. And if you use enough for long enough, she stops. You're thinking about the woman with the freckles, the 2 jars. Whose responsibility is it, you ask? Legally? Nobody's, Sophie says flatly. There's no FDA. The Pure Food and Drug Act from 1906 covers food adulteration and false drug labeling, but cosmetics aren't drugs. They're cosmetics. Different category. No one has to prove they're safe before they sell them. That can't be right. It's been right since 1906, and it'll keep being right until someone makes enough noise to change it, which will probably take a disaster of some specific size. Sophie picks up her fork and puts it down again. The industry polices itself, which is to say, it doesn't. Vera is looking at you. You know what that look means. It means she's been watching this conversation settle on your face and she knows what you're going to do about it, and she's deciding whether to argue. She decides not to. She picks up her tea. So, what do we do, you ask? We, says Millie. You and I, you say to Sophie. You make them, I sell them. What do we do? Sophie considers this with what you're learning is her habitual thoroughness. She doesn't answer quickly, she maps the territory first. I don't make the bleaching preparations, she says finally. I'm in the scent formulation side, perfume, so I can't refuse to make something I don't make. But you could say something. I could say something to my supervisor, who would say something to his supervisor, who would say something to someone who makes a decision based entirely on whether what I've said represents a threat to the revenue stream. She looks at you without apology. I need my job. I know. I'm not saying it's right. I know that too. Another silence. There are women writing about it, Vera says quietly. I've been reading in the papers about ingredient transparency, about what's actually in the products. There's a woman, a government chemist, I think, who's been doing testing, calling out companies by name. She looks up. It's slow, but it's happening. How slow? Vera shrugs. Government speed. Millie laughs despite herself. It's a tired laugh, a working woman's laugh, the laugh of someone who knows exactly what government speed means and has made peace with it. We keep doing what we do, she says, and we know what we know. And when someone asks us a direct question, we give them a straight answer. She spreads her hands. That's all. We've got. You nod. It's not enough. You know it's not enough. But it's what there is, tonight, at this table, with these women and this chicken and the October evening pressing its cold face against a restaurant window. The following Thursday, Mrs. Fitch does something unexpected. She invites you to lunch, not the rushed bread from home, eat standing lunch you're accustomed to, an actual restaurant lunch, Schrafft's on Broadway, which is where respectable working women in Manhattan eat when they want to feel that they've earned something. White tablecloths or real china, prices that make you flinch slightly, and then decide that the flinching is insufficient reason not to order the chicken croquettes. Mrs. Fitch orders a salad and tea which tells you something about either her finances or her appetite, and possibly both. I'm going to tell you something, she says, once the orders are placed, about how I came to be at the counter. You wait. You have learned, with Mrs. Fitch, that waiting is always the correct response. I was not, she says, always particularly interested in beauty products, as a category. She arranges her silverware with precision. I was trained as a nurse, or I was training to be one. St. Luke's here in Manhattan. I was 23. You did not know this. What happened, you ask? I married, she says simply. Mr. Fitch, who subsequently died. This was during the war, the influenza, 1918, and left me with a boarding house mortgage and a working knowledge of bandaging techniques, and no immediately marketable employment. She looks at you with the expression that is her version of dry humour, perfectly level, just the faintest suggestion that she is aware of the absurdity. Elizabeth Arden was hiring demonstrators. She wanted women who understood skin as a physical organ, rather than simply a surface. The nursing background was relevant. Did you tell her about the nursing? I told her everything. Madame Arden appreciates directness, which is one of the few things I admire about her unreservedly. A slight pause, which contains a volume of unsaid things about the many things she does not admire about Elizabeth Arden, which you file away for future consideration. She hired me. I worked for her for 3 years. Then I came to Wanamaker's. Why? Because Wanamaker serves all women, Mrs. Fitch says. Arden's salon serves wealthy women. The products are excellent. The service is excellent. But the women who walk through that door have already decided they can spend $50 on a facial. The women who walk past our counter haven't decided anything yet. They're still negotiating with themselves. She looks at you steadily. That's the more interesting conversation. The salad arrives. She begins to eat with the efficiency of someone who treats meals as fuel. You're going to be asked, she says, between precise forkfuls, to demonstrate the bleaching preparations more prominently next month. There's a new formulation arriving from the company. They want it featured. You are very still. Mrs. Fitch, you say. I know, she says. A pause in which both of you are aware of exactly what territory you're navigating. My recommendation, she says, which is a recommendation only and which you will do with as you see fit, is this. Demonstrate what you're asked to demonstrate, and answer every question you're asked with complete accuracy. She looks at you. Every question. If someone asks you what's in it, tell them what's on the label. If someone asks you whether it's safe for daily use, tell them what the label recommends. If someone asks you whether you use it yourself, I don't, you say. That is then what you tell them. She drinks her tea. You're not required to volunteer information that the company doesn't put on the label. You're required to be honest in response to direct questions. This is a distinction with some moral weight, and I leave it to your conscience to determine how much. That's a very careful line, you say. It's the line I've drawn, she says. After some consideration, you'll draw your own. The chicken croquettes arrive. They're excellent. You eat them, and you think about lines and where they go, and Mrs. Fitch eats her salad and says nothing further about it, and by the time you've finished and split the check, she's back to being entirely Mrs. Fitch, and the moment of unusual candour has closed over like water. But walking back to the store, you notice that you feel, unexpectedly, somewhat less alone. The radio programme happens on a Friday. I should explain that radio, in 1925, is not quite the settled, familiar medium it will become. It's still new, still slightly miraculous. The first commercial radio station, KDKA in Pittsburgh, has only been broadcasting since 1920. In 1925, there are approximately 600 stations across the country. Radios are in perhaps 10% of American homes, concentrated in the wealthier demographics. But the industry has noticed this 10%, because that 10% is exactly the demographic that buys face cream. Madame Rubenstein's marketing department has arranged a series of brief radio spots, advertisements, essentially, though they're framed as educational segments, to be broadcast on WEAF, which is the New York station operated by AT&T, and which reaches, in 1925, a significant portion of the metropolitan listening audience. The spots are presented as beauty chats, 5 minutes twice a week. A woman's voice, warm and authoritative, discussing some aspect of skincare, then a mention of the Helena Rubenstein line, then a station identification. The woman's voice, until 3 weeks ago, belonged to a Miss Harriet Vance of the company's marketing department, who has developed a throat condition that is making broadcasting uncomfortable for her. The woman's voice, starting this Friday, belongs to you. Mrs. Fitch arranged this. She did not explain how. She told you on Wednesday afternoon at the end of the day, with the matter-of-fact tone she uses for all significant information. Friday morning, 9 o'clock. You'll take the subway to 195 Broadway. That's the AT&T building. Ask for the Yasersucht EAF studios. Miss Vance will meet you and walk you through the format. You'll read from a script. It's 5 minutes. Don't rush. I've never broadcast before, you said. No one has before they have, said Mrs. Fitch. The AT&T building at 195 Broadway is so tall it makes you tilt your head back to see the top of it. 29 floors of white limestone, completed in 1923, designed by Ralph Walker. No, I'm wrong, that's the Barclay Vesey building. I'm getting my 1920s Manhattan skyscrapers confused, which is understandable because they built an extraordinary number of them in a very short time. The point is, it's large, imposing. The lobby is marble and more marble and then some additional marble, and the elevators have operators who announce the floors with practiced indifference. The Weef studios are on the 14th floor. Miss Vance is waiting in the corridor. A thin woman in her 30s, with a voice that, even in ordinary conversation, has a slightly abraded quality, as if it's been used harder than it was designed for. She shakes your hand warmly and walks you through the space quickly, because it's 8:45 and there isn't much time. The studio itself is smaller than you expected. A room perhaps 12 feet square, with walls that are peculiar, padded, upholstered, covered in some material you don't immediately identify and then recognize as heavy fabric over a framework, designed to absorb sound, to prevent the echo that would otherwise make the broadcast unintelligible. There is a table, on the table a microphone, a large heavy thing cylindrical on a stand, looking considerably more serious than you anticipated. A single lamp, a glass of water, and your script typed on 3 pages of white paper. The microphone picks up everything, Miss Vance says. Every sound, rustling paper, swallowing, your breathing if you breathe too close. If you need to clear your throat, turn your head. She demonstrates. Stay about 8 inches away, not closer. How do I know if it's too loud? You won't, not directly. The engineer. She gestures toward a glass window on one side of the room, behind which a man in headphones is doing things with equipment. He monitors. He'll give you a signal if there's a problem. She looks at you. You've done public speaking? Some, at school. I gave demonstrations to groups this week. It's different, she says. In front of people, you can see them respond. You can adjust. In front of a microphone, you're speaking into silence. You get nothing back. The temptation is to rush, to fill the silence, to talk faster. She touches her throat. I did that for 6 months. Don't do that. What do I do instead? Talk to one person, she says. Not to the city, not to the imaginary audience, to one specific person. A woman sitting in her kitchen in Queens, still in her morning robe, with her coffee gone cold on the table because she's listening. Talk to her. You look at the microphone. A woman in Queens, morning robe, cold coffee. All right, you say. At 9 o'clock exactly, the engineer raises one finger, and then you speak. Good morning. I'm Agnes Calloway, and this is your Friday Beauty Chat, brought to you by Helena Rubenstein. Your voice sounds strange to you. Not bad, just unfamiliar. The room absorbs it. Nothing comes back. I want to talk this morning about something that I'm asked about almost every day at the counter. Dry skin in autumn. Because it's October now, and if you've noticed that your skin feels tight after washing, that there's a slight roughness at the cheeks or around the mouth, that your usual routine doesn't quite seem sufficient anymore, you're not imagining it. You breathe. Don't rush. What's happening is this. Your skin has its own invisible barrier, a thin layer of oils and proteins that holds moisture in. During summer, your body produces these fairly generously. Then the temperatures drop, and the heated air inside your home strips moisture from the surface of the skin, and the cold air outside does the same. And the barrier starts to struggle. You can hear yourself thinking. In the padded silence of the studio, your own thoughts have a texture. The instinct is to wash more, to feel that the tightness is a cleanliness problem. In fact, the opposite is usually true. Washing with a harsh soap removes the very oils your skin is trying to maintain. What you want instead is what I think of as feeding, giving the skin something to work with. The paper rustles as you turn to the second page. You remembered, turn your head. The Helena Rubenstein Valet's skin food is exactly what the name suggests. A rich, emollient preparation. That means something that replaces and supports the skin's natural oils, designed for the night hours, when the skin does the majority of its repair work. You apply a small amount with your fingertips, using a gentle circular motion. You leave it. In the morning, your skin has absorbed what it needs, and the tightness, the October tightness, is considerably reduced. The engineer shifts slightly behind his window. You take this as encouraging. For those of you with particularly sensitive skin, those who find heavier preparations feel congested or heavy, The creme ganoine is a lighter option, less rich, but still protective, suitable for daytime wear, under your face powder if you use it. 1 page left. I'd also like to say something that isn't on any product label because I think it's useful to know. Miss Vance, who's watching through the glass beside the engineer, raises an eyebrow. The changes you see in your skin are not failures, they're responses. Your skin is responding to the season, to the environment, to the year you've had. It's doing its job. What we're doing with good skincare is helping it do that job, giving it the tools it needs. This isn't transformation, it's support. The Helena Rubenstein Valesi skincare line is available at Wanamaker's department store and at Helena Rubenstein salons across the city. Ask to speak with a demonstrator who can help you find the preparation that's right for your specific skin. I'm Magnus Calloway. Have a beautiful Friday. The engineer drops his finger. 5 minutes and 12 seconds, he tells you afterward. Slightly over. He'll need to edit the sign-off, but the rest of it was clean. Miss Vance shakes your hand in the corridor. The part that wasn't on the label, she says, not accusingly, just naming it. Was it a problem, she thinks. No, she says slowly. Actually, no. It was... She looks for the word. It was different. Most of the beauty chats are instruction. Do this. Apply that. Yours had a... She touches her throat again. An argument. Is that bad? It's interesting, she says, which is possibly better. You do the Friday beauty chat for 6 consecutive weeks. Each week the format is the same. 5 minutes, a script prepared partly by the marketing department and partly by you, a topic that connects a skin concern to a product solution. But each week you find the place in the script where there's room for something that isn't purely sales language, a small, true thing. The observation that skin responds to stress, and that the stress of modern city life is real and worth acknowledging. The note that the best beauty routine is the one you'll actually maintain, which might be 2 steps instead of 7. The gentle suggestion that before buying a new product, a woman should give her current routine 6 weeks, because skin changes slowly, and patience is itself a kind of care. You get letters. This surprises you more than anything. You didn't know the program received listener mail. But apparently it does. The station forwards it to the company, and the company's marketing department sends it on to Mrs. Fitch, and Mrs. Fitch hands you a small stack of envelopes one Tuesday morning without comment. 14 letters. Over 6 weeks. Most of them are from women in the metropolitan area, Queens, Brooklyn, the Bronx, New Jersey. Some have tried the products you mentioned and are reporting back with the specific enthusiasm of people who feel heard. A woman from Astoria, whose autumn dryness resolved after 3 weeks of the skin food. A woman from Hoboken who says she's 58 years old and has been washing her face with the same soap she uses on her dishes, and would like to know if it's too late. It is not too late. You write back. You write to all of them. Brief notes. Specific answers. Mrs. Fitch sees you writing at the backroom table during the lunch hour and doesn't say a word about it, which is, you've come to understand her version of enthusiastic endorsement. One letter is from a woman who gives her name as Mrs. E. Burgess, who writes from an address in Harlem, and who asks in 3 careful sentences whether you know of any product in the Helena Rubenstein line that addresses what she calls uneven coloration across the cheekbones, and reads, between those 3 careful sentences, a woman who is asking about the bleaching creams without saying so directly, in the way that people ask about the thing they want when they're not sure they're allowed to want it. You sit with this letter for a long time. Then you write back. You tell her about the toner, which addresses surface discoloration without the active bleaching agents. You describe it with complete accuracy. What it contains, what it does, what it won't do. You tell her that uneven coloration across the cheekbones is, in your experience, one of the most common concerns you encounter, that it has any number of causes, including sun exposure and simple variation in melanin production, and that it's entirely a matter of personal preference whether to address it at all. You do not mention the bleaching cream. You do not tell her not to use it. You give her the information she needs to make a choice. It is not a perfect response. You know it's not perfect. You know that Mrs. E. Burgess from Harlem is navigating pressures you can only partially imagine, that the standard of beauty she's being held to is not one that was designed with her in mind, and that one letter from a counter girl at Wanamaker's is not adequate to the size of that problem. But it's what you have. You mail it. November arrives while you're not paying full attention. The city changes in ways that are almost theatrical in their swiftness. 1 week the light is the long golden light of October, and then there's a particular grey Tuesday when you wake up, and the quality of the morning is entirely different, heavier, and you know without looking at a calendar that October is finished. Your coat is insufficient. You wear it anyway, because the alternative is spending money you don't have on a heavier one, but you feel the November cold as a physical argument against the thin wool. Your hands are suffering again at the knuckles. You've started applying the demonstration hand cream more liberally, less apologetically, because the alternative is cracked skin at the joints, which is both painful and professionally counterproductive when your hands are demonstrating the benefits of moisturizing to customers. The boarding house gets colder. The radiator's generosity becomes strictly rationed. You and Vera develop the Saturday habit of going to the reading room at the YWCA on West 53rd Street, which is warm and has chairs and serves as an excellent library and a passable social space. You read. Vera reads. Sometimes you talk. More often you don't. In the comfortable way of people who've been sharing a room long enough to be at ease with each other's silence. You read about the cosmetics industry when you can find material about it. There isn't much. Not yet. A few trade publications, some magazine articles, a pamphlet from a Women's Bureau researcher at the Department of Labour, writing about working conditions in the cosmetics manufacturing sector that is dry in style and devastating in content, and that you read twice and then leave on the table in case Vera wants to read it, which she does, and which she returns to you without comment, in the way you've both developed for handling information that is significant and unpleasant, and not immediately actionable. You also read Vogue, which the YWCA receives as a donation from a member who has finished with each issue. Vogue in 1925 is extraordinary in its self-assurance. It radiates the absolute certainty that the people who read it are the right kind of people, and that the products it advertises are the correct products for those people, and that the world is arranged in a comprehensible order that places style and commerce at its centre. The beauty advertising in Vogue is instructive in the way that instructive things are. Useful, but also uncomfortable. The language used to describe what products will do for you, the verbs in particular, restores, revives, perfects, corrects, erases. The thing being restored or corrected or erased is always, implicitly, a failure. The natural state of a woman's face is, according to this advertising, a problem. The product is the solution. You sell products. You believe in some of them and are uncertain about others and skeptical about a few. You believe in the cleanser because the cleanser does what it says. It cleans. You believe in the moisturizing preparations because moisture helps dry skin and you've seen it happen. You're uncertain about the youth generating claims because youth generation is not really something that can be achieved with beeswax, regardless of what the label says, and somewhere in the laboratory that produced that label, someone knows this too. But you've also seen, you keep coming back to this, the girl in the brown coat, the way she walked out. You've seen what the products do when the woman selling them tells the truth about what they can and can't do, and still the woman buying them leaves feeling better, feeling looked after, feeling like she has a plan. Maybe the plan is worth the beeswax, maybe both things are true. You keep coming back to both things being true. The counter in November gets busier. The Christmas season is not yet upon you. That doesn't arrive in full force until December, and Mrs. Fitch has warned you that December is its own category of experience. But the anticipatory shopping has begun. Women buying gifts, women buying for themselves with the specific, purposeful pleasure of deciding, before the gift-giving pressure arrives, what they actually want. You sell a great deal of perfume. Perfume is Dorothea's territory, technically, but the departments overlap during busy periods, and you find that you have a reasonable instinct for perfume recommendation, which has more to do with personality than nose, really, with how someone carries themselves, whether they gravitate toward warm or cool, toward assertive or subtle. You're poaching, Dorothea says, not unkindly. Someone had to help her. She'd been standing at your counter for 10 minutes. I was with another customer. I know. I watched until I couldn't stand it anymore. She was about to leave. Dorothea looks at the receipt for the scent you sold, shrugs. We split the commission. There's a commission. There's a very small commission. You didn't know. Mrs. Fitch didn't mention a commission. Dorothea gives you a look of great significance. Agnes, she says, you need to have a conversation with Mrs. Fitch. You have that conversation the following day. It is brief and slightly awkward and results in the revelation that yes, there is a commission structure, small but real, and that Mrs. Fitch did not mention it because she considers it unseemly to discuss compensation arrangements in the workplace, which is a position you find both principled and aggravating. You've been leaving money on the table, Dorothea says at lunch, apparently. How much do you need to save before you can get your own place? You have done this calculation many times. A furnished room to yourself, not shared, in a respectable building, runs approximately $8 to $10 a month in 1925, depending on the neighbourhood. You're currently paying $4.50 for half a room. The gap is not insurmountable with the commission added in. 3 more months, maybe, you say? 4? Dorothea nods. West side or east? I haven't decided. East side's cheaper, west side's more interesting. I know. That's the problem. Dorothea laughs. She laughs easily, Dorothea, which is one of the things you value about eating lunch with her. The work requires a particular sustained composure. Warmth without intimacy, authority without condescension, perpetual readiness to engage. And by noon, it can become exhausting to maintain. Dorothea's laugh is a relief from it. You're going to stay in New York, she says. It's not a question. Yes. You weren't sure when you arrived. No. What changed? You think about this. Not very long. I started knowing things, you say. Specific things. Which streets to take. Who supplies what. How to read what a customer actually wants. I stopped feeling like the city was doing something to me and started feeling like I was doing something in it. You shrug. That changed it. December arrives with a violence that is almost personal. The temperature drops 10 degrees in 2 days. The wind off the Hudson comes down the crosstown streets like something with intent. The coal smoke is thicker. Every furnace in the city turns itself up and releases its contribution to the general grey ceiling overhead, and the store becomes something else entirely. Mrs. Fitch warned you, but warnings have a limit. Some things have to be experienced. Wanamaker's at Christmas is a physical challenge. The store is packed from opening. Not the usual morning trickle, but a genuine crowd from 9 o'clock with a particular quality of urgency that the rest of the year doesn't have. People shopping on deadlines. People who need something specific and need it now, today, before the party, before the mail date, before they have to face their mother-in-law without a gift. The beauty counter has a long queue. Not quite a formal queue. Manhattan shoppers don't form queues without significant social pressure, but something functionally equivalent to one. A loose crowd of women pressing forward, each trying to be next, each with a purpose. Mrs. Fitch manages this with the calm authority of a general directing a well-drilled force. She moves down the counter continuously, engaging, directing, moving people towards specific products, cutting off the browsers before they can become obstacles, ensuring that no space behind the glass is wasted. You do the same. You are faster than you were in October. Your hands move with the practiced ease of repetition. Open the tester, take the brush, blend, remove, the sequence becoming automatic, freeing your attention for the thing that can't be automated, reading the woman in front of you. By 11 a.m. on December 10th, you have served 24 customers. This is more than your average full day in September. Your feet have long since stopped hurting in the way that can be felt individually. They're simply a continuous, undifferentiated ache that begins at the heel and extends up through the calves. At some point in the mid-afternoon, around 3 you think, though time becomes compressed in the December rush in a way that makes it difficult to judge, something happens that stops you. A woman arrives at your end of the counter. She's perhaps 45, well-dressed in a practical way. A woman for whom clothes are tools rather than statements. She's accompanied by a girl of maybe 15 or 16, the daughter obviously, same jaw, same way of holding herself, who is wearing the expression teenagers wear when they're simultaneously desirous and embarrassed by that desire, wanting something from this adult space and not quite comfortable claiming the right to be in it. "My daughter," the woman says, with a directness that tells you she's used to managing situations efficiently, "would like to ask you something. She's been asking for 3 months and I've finally agreed to bring her in." She looks at the girl. "Go ahead, Ruthie." The girl, Ruthie, looks at you. She's at the age where the face is still deciding itself. Good bones underneath, a sprinkling of adolescent blemishes at the chin, hair that's been curled by someone who knows how, but not set quite right, so it's pulling loose by afternoon. She looks terrified in the specific way of people who have wanted something for a long time and are now suddenly about to have a chance at it. "I want to know," she says carefully, "how to look less." She stops, swallows. "My friend says I should use powder, but when I've tried it, it looks wrong. It looks like a mask, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong." The mother is watching you, not with the hovering protective anxiety of a parent worried about what you'll say, more with the calm attention of a woman who has decided to let something happen and is observing how it goes. You come out from behind the counter. "May I see?" you say to Ruthie. She tips her face up toward you with the vulnerable obedience of someone putting themselves in another's hands. Close up you can see. The blemishes at the chin are mild. The real issue is the skin tone is slightly uneven. Some redness, some pallor, the normal variation of young skin. The powder she's been using, you can see traces of it along the hairline, is too pale and too heavy for her. The powder you're using is wrong for your skin, you tell her, directly, but without any implication of fault. The shade, probably, and the texture, it's a common issue. Most women start with whatever their mother uses, which isn't necessarily right for their skin type. The mother makes a sound that might be amusement. May I? You gesture, and Ruthie nods, and you take a translucent finishing powder, lighter in texture than the pressed powder, one that evens without covering, and a brush, and you demonstrate on her hand first so she can see what you're doing. Then, lightly, the face, just the areas of redness, just enough to smooth. You step back. Ruthie's mother is looking at her daughter. Something happens in the mother's face that she probably doesn't know is visible. A softening, a recognition. The daughter she sent into this adult transaction, and the daughter who will emerge from it. "Oh," says Ruthie, touching her cheek. The same word as the girl in the brown coat. Just, "Oh." That's the shade you want, you tell her. The translucent powder, not the pressed. And a brush, not the sponge. The brush gives you control over how much you apply. Start with almost nothing and build. You can always add. "How much does it cost?" Ruthie asks. And the question is very young in the way it's asked. The directness of someone who doesn't yet know to pretend cost is secondary. The powder is 60 cents. The brush is 25. You look at her. The brush is the most important part. Don't skip the brush. Ruthie looks at her mother. The mother looks at you. Is the brush from the Rubenstein line? No. Sable brushes we get from a different supplier, but for application quality it makes the difference. The mother nods once. Decision made. Both, she says. You wrap them together, the powder in its tissue, the brush in a paper sleeve. You write out the instructions on a small card. The card is something you've started doing for younger customers, because instructions given verbally go in one ear and out the other when someone is overwhelmed, but written down, they can be consulted at home in the bathroom mirror. Ruthie takes the bag with both hands. She says, "Thank you," with the careful sincerity of someone who means it. You're going to figure out your own version of it, you tell her. Every woman does. This is just a starting point. You watch them go. The daughter and the mother walking together toward the Broadway exit. The mother saying something to the daughter that makes the daughter smile. The counter around you continues its December rush. You turn back to the next customer. Closing time on December 23rd is the end of something. Not the year. The year ends officially in 8 days. But the working year, the thing that started in September, when you arrive from Dayton with $42 and a determination, ends here in the particular exhaustion of a department store on the last major shopping day before Christmas. The counter is nearly bare of stock. What couldn't be restocked has been sold. The testers need replacing. The tissue paper in the display trays is exhausted, crumpled, its crisp white beginning used up. You and Mrs. Fitch close out the till together. The numbers are extraordinary. December always is, she's told you. But this December has been exceptional, a consequence of something in the economic weather of 1925, some combination of confidence and availability, and the specific willingness of this year's customer to spend money that perhaps you wouldn't have spent last year or will spend more carefully next year. You do not know this standing at the closing counter. What you know is that your feet hurt in a way that has passed through pain into something almost philosophical, and your hands have a fine tremor from the sustained activity of the afternoon, and your jaw is slightly sore from the maintained warmth of professional expression, and you feel, entirely without sentimentality, that you have done something. Mrs. Fitch closes the till ledger. She looks at it. Then she looks at you. "Go home, Agnes," she says. "We're done here." "Merry Christmas, Mrs. Fitch." A pause. "Merry Christmas," she says. You walk home in the cold. Not the L, not tonight. Tonight you walk. Because the air, even the December Manhattan air with its cold smell and its cold that gets into your collar, feels necessary, like something you've earned. The Christmas lights are on along Broadway. Department store windows full of displays. Toy trains and artificial snow, and mannequins in party clothes and arrangements of gifts wrapped in paper so beautiful. The wrapping is itself a product of aesthetic labour. You stop at one window for a moment. In the corner of the display, among the other things, a small collection of cosmetics, arranged as gifts. A powder compact with a mirror that flashes in, the electric light. A perfume bottle with a gold stopper. A lipstick in a silver case. Beauty as gift. Beauty as the thing you give the woman you love to say, "I see you. I want you to feel seen." Or beauty as the thing you give because you don't know what else to give, and it's available and it's pretty and it comes wrapped in tissue. Both of these at the same time. You keep walking, and now we really are at the end. Not December 23rd. We've left that behind, with the Broadway lights and the exhausted counter and Mrs. Fitch's 2 words of Christmas greeting. We're back in October. Back to the beginning. Back to the first morning. The first eyes open in darkness. The smell of Vera's cold cream. We're going back there because that's where it started, and the end of a thing rhymes with its beginning, and this is how stories settle into sleep. You are Agnes Calloway. You are 19 years old, and you will be 20 in March, and you came to New York with $42 and a letter of reference, and you have done more with those things than you knew you would be able to do when you left Dayton with your 2 suitcases and your fierce, slightly frightening determination. You have learned to see a woman's face and know what it needs. You have learned the names of the things, the emollients and the emulsifiers and the occlusive agents and the pigments, and you have learned that the names matter less than the understanding, and the understanding matters less than the conversation, and the conversation is only as good as the attention behind it. You have learned that selling things is only partly about the things. It's mostly about the space between you and another person, and what gets said in that space, and whether it's true. You have learned that truth is harder than script, and more useful, and sometimes gets you into trouble with management, and is still worth the trouble. You have learned that this city is not a backdrop. It is a participant. It shapes you every day, takes something from you, and gives you something else in return. The exchange continuous and unequal and not entirely fair and completely unavoidable and, on the best days, exhilarating. You've earned what you have here, and what you have is not very much, and is also not nothing. The room on West 28th Street is dark. Vera's breathing is slow and even behind the yellow curtain. Outside, Manhattan is being itself. The cars, the L, the distant jazz from somewhere, the city's permanent insistence on its own reality. The smell of cold cream, roses and mineral oil, filling the room so gently you don't notice it anymore. You breathe it without noticing it. It's just the air of here, October air. first-year air, the air of not yet knowing what you're going to become. Let it settle, let the day come down. The customer who needed the powder, and the customer who needed the permission, and the counter, and the factory, and the radio microphone, and Mrs. Fitch's nod. Let them come down like the temperature drops at evening, all the heat going out of them, leaving just the shape. Tomorrow there will be more customers. Tomorrow there will be more questions, more faces, more of the endless transaction of women looking for the thing they can't quite name. But that's tomorrow. Right now, just the room, just the cold that is exactly the right amount of cold under exactly the right number of blankets, just your hands finally still. The left index finger with its faint trace of pink blossom at the tip. The knuckles slightly rough, tending toward the redness that occupational hazard eventually produces in everyone who works with products all day. Working hands, hands that have done something. Centuries will pass. The city you're sleeping in will be rebuilt over itself, layer after layer, the bones of 1925 Manhattan buried under what comes after. The boarding house on West 28th Street will become something else. Offices, apartments, the flower district, expanding and contracting with the tides of real estate. The Wanamaker's store will close, eventually. The counter will be gone. But the pharmacies will still be full of face cream. The jars will be more sophisticated in their packaging and their ingredients and their claims. The claims will be wilder and also more carefully regulated. There will be entire regulatory bodies dedicated to the question of what cosmetics can say about themselves and what they cannot. But the jars will be there. And behind the counters, or on the websites, or in the videos playing on the small screens that will exist in every hand, there will be someone explaining, translating the product into a feeling, finding the word for what the woman in front of them actually wants. Some things don't change. The wanting doesn't change. The need to be seen doesn't change. The hope that somewhere, something exists that will help, that doesn't change either. It's been there since Galen of Pergamon mixed beeswax and olive oil in the 2nd century. It'll be there when you can't imagine. The church bells are striking 11 o'clock, 7 hours until the alarm, 7 hours of quiet. Let sleep come the way it wants to come. Not summoned, not forced, just allowed. The thoughts slowing, the body settling, the city becoming a sound you're inside rather than a problem you're navigating. You're warm enough, you're here enough, you've learned enough for today. Tomorrow you'll learn more. That's the whole of it. That's the whole beautiful, exhausting, contradictory truth of being 19 in a city that wants everything from you and gives everything back. Let the sounds blur. Let the yellow curtain disappear into the dark. Let the smell of roses and mineral oil be just air. You've earned this rest. Take it, and dream of whatever dreams may come. Good night.